Welcome to the Geek podcast, where we're coming to you in the third dimension. We're actually not doing that, but I'm Void, and I'm here with my co-host, Beej.
Well, I hope we're in the third dimension. I don't...
Well,
what are we not? Are you a two-dimensional person?
It's an audio medium. Today, we are talking about the 3DS console, and we're looking back at it. But before we get into that, we should contextualize here for a second. This was an idea from Rob, and you and I took it and kind of expanded it and put a spin on it. So his initial question to us was, it was a follow-up to our episode where we talked about how to choose a game console. And he basically said, like, he'd like us to do a follow-up talking about, like, people who might not care about the latest and greatest, like, what should they look back at? What should they care about for older systems? Which is a great question, you know? And rather than a newer one for like multiplayer games and always online and like connecting with other people, it's like, what if you're going to like take a step back, you know, either you're more price conscious or you just want more like historical context, or you just don't care about the latest and greatest. That's fine. Yeah. So he said, you know, should we go like NES Classic? Should we think about emulators or older systems, or like some of the just go out and get classic consoles? And you and I talked about this back and forth and kind of looked at it a few different ways. And what we decided to do was we can do a bunch of these look backs, I think is what we landed on.
Yeah, where we can really look at all of them and kind of, because you and I have experience with all of these consoles, that there is not a game console out there that one of us has not touched and probably played extensively and spent a lot of time with it. So rather than just kind of like, oh, this is what you need to do, we can dive in on these and at least give a real player's perspective to see if that's something that you want, and whether you've ever messed with it or not, you might be able to go back and be like, oh, that's exactly the kind of system I want.
Yeah, so that's why we're kicking it off with the 3DS. But I mean, basically, these are going to be, we have, especially right now, we're kind of like the dog days of summer. We're getting to the point where the summer slump, which we talked about a couple weeks ago, is definitely in effect. Like, we'll get to a point here in a few weeks where it's like, week after week, we're going to have new stuff to talk about, new games coming out, new media, and then we get into the holidays. And I mean, we'll be fine for a while. But there's always weeks that we land on randomly every once in a while where it's like we could do literally any topic because there's nothing super timely. So we're just going to take these and start putting them in there sometimes, not all the time. But anything that's not a current like modern gen console is kind of fair game. And we're basically going to do our favorite games and favorite recommendations, right?
Yeah, where we can talk about the stuff. Like, there are so many games that we could talk about. So we're going to have to narrow it down really to the ones that have like kept our attention, given us these memories, and stuff that we have gone back and played, or stuff that we absolutely will not under any circumstances go back and play because our memories are so good and we will never touch it again and ruin our childhoods. Yeah,
so we'll come back to this a few times with a few different looks at it. You know, whenever we don't have something more timely to talk about and we feel like doing one. But we're starting with the 3DS and 2DS, really, that whole family of systems, which we should probably say right up front, if you don't already know, all 3DS and 2DS games can be played on each other. It's one family of systems. The only difference is the screen of the 2DS does not have that 3D element to it. That's like the only difference.
Well, there's one caveat on that, where the new 3DS, the one actually branded new 3DS, has games that none of the other ones can play, except for the new 2DS. Stuff like Xenoblade Chronicles 3D, but just a few.
It's only a couple games. It's only like a handful, if even. So for the most part, we're fine, right?
Yeah, mostly you don't have to worry about it. And they play regular DS games.
Yes, this is true too. So why are we starting with this? Well, it's almost dead as a console, but it's not quite dead. It's a last generation console, technically, at this point, but it's still really good, and it's still like fairly recent. It's portable, which you and I both love, and it's like, I always think it's easier to get into portable gaming if you've been away from gaming for a while, because you can take it anywhere with you, and it's just easier to pick up and play than if you're not used to sitting in front of a TV to play games.
Yeah, and it's something where you're not changing your lifestyle, you're not changing your habits, but you're bringing that into what you're normally doing, and then you can get used to kind of doing that. I know with like Katie, whenever she was picking out the Switch, that's a good thing for her to be able to carry that with her and go places. And that's a big deal for some people. Like you said, I know it is for me.
Yeah, well, and the other thing is that it's close enough to being a dead system that we can recommend our favorite 3DS games, and we know that the list probably won't change from here on out.
And that's both sad and great, because like I'm still buying 3DS games. This is still an active system for me. It's the newest system that I've bought, actually. I bought a full 3DS, a full new 3DS, so I could play these games on it, and I play it recently more than I am my Switch.
Yeah, that's interesting because like mine is in the closet and I haven't touched it in I don't know how long. It's been a while. Like I've retired it basically. I'm not going to get rid of it because I hold on to my old consoles because they're cool. And I love the 3DS as a system, but I've kind of moved on from it. But yeah, I mean, it's still easy to recommend because there's so many good games. And it's a good system because like Nintendo handhelds are always a good system. You know, looking back on my whole history of playing game consoles, Nintendo handhelds have been this like constant thing in my life for basically as long as I can remember. Since my grandparents gave me like my very first Game Boy when I don't even know how old. I was a kid for sure.
That's awesome. You got a game that your grandparents gave it to you?
Yeah, if I'm remembering correctly.
That's
like
awesome.
The original Game Boy, you know, like the gray brick one.
Oh yeah, and we were poor, so I didn't get one for a little bit after it came out. But the original Game Boy, I wanted so badly that I would call in every afternoon. Do you remember when like Fox TV had stuff out for kids, and you would call in and try to win if you were the certain caller? Ours was channel 17, so you had to be the 17th caller in on the TV network out of Nashville. And I was trying so hard every single day from school to try to win me a Game Boy, and I never got it. I got one eventually, and like you said, it's been there ever since with a Nintendo handheld. Like it is with me something every trip I've taken since then in some way or some form or fashion.
Yeah, and this is like a particularly good Nintendo handheld. They're all good. I've liked them all. But this has got to be one of my all-time favorite consoles. And it has options. It has the 3D options. It has 2D options. You know, I have like a 3DS XL, which was great. I loved it. And then my kids still play on their 2DSs all the time. And it's like there's just so many options out there for this one. So you can kind of find whatever works for your price point and whatever you're going for, right? Like if you want to get it for your kids, you go get a 2DS and you get the base model because it's made of plastic and they're going to drop it and it's going to be fine, you know?
It's hard to break. That we did that. We lent ours. We have a 2DS. Well, it's Jennifer's. It was her birthday present one year, and we've lent it to our 8-year-old nephew. We have beaten this thing up. We've dropped it and just thrown it places. It still works just fine. Like there's a little bit of grime around the touchscreen because we haven't cleaned it, and it's there. We just play it, but it's great. Like Jennifer's still playing it. She was playing the old Incredibles game on it just a couple of weeks ago before the movie came out. It's great, and it's a brick. I mean, when I say it's a brick, like you said, you can't break it really.
Yeah, well, and like there's so many different types that are out there too.
Yes,
you can really like you can go get the more like collector models that are like a unique design or they're limited edition, or you can just go and spend less money and just get like whatever they have in the store the day that you walk in. Like it's very easy to get this system at whatever price point you're after.
And I mean, you can get the big one that isn't the clamshell for I think $60 now. That it's like I think the base price is either $69 or $79, maybe $59. I don't even know right now, but you'll catch them on sale very, very often. And even the new 2DS, the it's a clamshell 2DS. It's $129 base right now, which is close to what the original 2DS came out at. I think it was $99 originally, or maybe it was $129.
The other thing that you mentioned, but like we're probably not going to dwell on a whole lot for this episode, is that it's completely backwards compatible with the Nintendo DS, so the original DS. So you can put any of those games into this and it plays it just fine. So it's kind of like you're getting two Nintendo handhelds in one, which is awesome.
And it's let me play Chrono Trigger. That was my favorite thing. That was why I cared about the DS stuff on it. I haven't played a lot of them, but Chrono Trigger I played on the 2DS, and it was delightful.
Yeah, so let's get into like our favorite games from this almost dead system, not quite dead all the way. I have a big list, so I pulled out a couple to talk more about, but I have a bunch I can fly through quick. Do you have a few that you wanted to just like touch on before we go deeper?
Probably the main one that I just wanted to touch on was Super Scribblenauts. Have you ever played any of the Scribblenauts games?
I have. It's been a while. I don't think I played it on this. I might have played on the original DS, but I definitely have played Scribblenauts somewhere at some point.
And Jennifer loves them. Like that was why we actually got the. Actually, no, I don't think you played on I think it actually came out on the 2DS because that's why I bought the 3DS because that's why I bought her the 2DS was to play Scribblenauts because that was what she wanted, and it's just this word game where you're solving puzzles and writing all the words, and you summon whatever you write. and they've gotten kind of repetitive over the years, but those first couple were just really, really fun to play. And if you've never played a Scribblenauts game, pick up Super Scribblenauts. It uses adjectives as well, like you can summon a rainbow unicorn instead of just a unicorn, or Scribblenauts Unmasked. It's DC Comics based, so you can summon a fiery Batman or something like that, and it'll summon Batman on fire, and you can fight people that way and solve the puzzles. It's pretty cool. Like that was really the first game that we got into the system for, and it's still one of those really fond memories that's fun to go back and play a little bit.
So I have a bunch of ones that I can kind of glaze over, but are worth mentioning. So SteamWorld Heist, it was on the 3DS first, and I have a couple games pulled out that are 3DS first, which are now a bunch of consoles, but they're worth mentioning here. So SteamWorld Heist, it's a really cool 2D side-scrolling like strategy trajectory turn-based game. It's an interesting blend of a lot of things, but it's a SteamWorld game. They always do good stuff with SteamWorld games, and you and I have talked about that one on the show before, so I can easily recommend that. There's Bravely Default, which you and I have talked about at length on past episodes, like the JRPG one, but it's a good JRPG. Easily recommended.
It's the best Final Fantasy game that's come out in a long time, and it's not a Final Fantasy game.
Yeah, exactly. There's New Super Mario Brothers 2, so if you want to have a 2D Mario game, that's the main one on the system. There's Mario Kart 7, which is a precursor to Mario Kart 8 and Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. It's essentially...
Never played it.
Well, so the thing is, it's essentially all of the modern things that 8 and 8 Deluxe do, but like one step back, but not in a bad way. It's just handheld. And it's like when they first introduced a lot of the very modern things to the game, but they're all there. They're all in some form in Mario Kart 7. So like it's still fun to go back and play. There's Animal Crossing New Leaf, which is probably the best Animal Crossing game out there. It's the one that I played the most ever out of all the Animal Crossing games. There are 2 different sets of Pokemon games. So Pokemon X and Y, and then Pokemon Sun and Moon. The latest and greatest games are still on the 3DS until the new Pokemon game hits on the Switch this fall. Well, yeah, so these will still be like evergreen and good forever because it's a Pokemon game. But you were also going to say that...
And also Alpha Sapphire and Omega Ruby are on there because I was playing Omega Ruby. That was actually the system that I got. So there was the remake of Sapphire and Ruby as well, and they're great.
Yeah, so there's really 3 different generations of Pokemon games on the 3DS, which is sweet. There are the newest Layton games, so if you are a puzzle game fan and you've ever gotten into the Professor Layton series or ever wanted to, there's a few of them that are on 3DS, and then all of the earlier ones are on the DS. So you could play like the entire Professor Layton series on this because of the backwards compatibility. And then Pocket Card Jockey. Do you remember,
I remember
me talking
you telling
about
me about this, yeah.
Okay, so it's still... probably the best, like one of the best card-based video games that I've ever played. You ride a horse by playing solitaire, and you race it in like horse races. I don't know. I don't remember why. There's like magic or something, and the guy who wants to be a horse racer isn't good at racing horses, but he's really good at solitaire. So your solitaire turns into horse racing. It's fantastic. I love that game. So if you get this system, you should definitely at least look at Pocket Card Jockey because I'm serious. It's a really, really good game. And then
just listening to you describe that, and I've heard it all before. Like we had a long discussion on it a long time ago, but just that description hit me the wrong way this time. And it's wonderful.
I love it. It's a good game. And then Kirby Planet Robobot. So like, Kirby games, they're hit and miss for me, but like my daughter loves them. A lot of people out there love Kirby games. You can get a Kirby game or 2. I think there are like 2 unique ones for this system. Plus there's some
triple
if you look
deluxe.
back at the DS. Yep. Yeah, exactly. So those are like the quick hit ones that I have. I have like a couple more like in-depth recommendations to get into, but I wanted to hear what you had first.
Like the main one for me is Xenoblade Chronicles. Like it came out and a long time ago and was a remake of the Wii game, and it took me a long time. Y'all have heard me talk about this a lot, but that is probably the best 3DS game that I've played, and I say that in kind of quotes because it's not the most fun that I've had, but just in terms of overall production quality, everything else, it's like it's just a complete full experience. Like it's great, but you have to have the new 3DS to play it, and it's definitely a console port. I mean, there's no way around it, but it is awesome. And I know you won't ever play it because you don't like just sitting and watching cutscenes and listening and everything, because it's got the same thing as Xenoblade 2. So I mean, it's a not as good version of Xenoblade 2, so you really won't like it anymore.
Okay.
And I know you've played part of it before and bounced off. You'll bounce off hard again if you try it again. But probably the other one that I would say just to really go in depth on would be Dragon Quest VIII. It is so good that it used to be a PS2 game. And I was looking at it, and I never cared about it on the PS2. They've made a PC port, or a not PC port, mobile port of it, where it's portrait mode, and it's basically on auto run, and you play it, and it's supposed to be okay, but not great. But the Dragon Quest VIII 3DS remake is just brilliant. It has all sorts of extra characters and content that they didn't have anywhere else. The only problem that I've read about was the soundtrack wasn't orchestral, and it you can tell that I'm not a music person in games. Usually I'll either keep it low or off, or like sometimes I like it, sometimes I don't. It has to be really, really good for me to notice it. This one was mediocre enough that I noticed it, that it was out of place in the game. And it was weird like that. I mean, it's hard to say. Like, it wasn't bad. It just felt like it could have been better. And then I read on, it's like, oh yeah, that's why they kind of had to dumb down the sound for the system to get everything else in it. And it's one of the best JRPGs I've played maybe ever, just because it's so complete. Like, I've heard it called the Final Fantasy VII of the Dragon Quest series, and it really hurts me when people say that, because of how I feel about Final Fantasy VII most of the time. Like, it's way overhyped. But this one was super good. That it was my introduction to the Dragon Quest series. And if you want to spend like 60 hours and not really realize it on a game, Dragon Quest VIII on the 3DS is absolutely great. And it's just really basic JRPG. I mean, there's not really anything special about it. There's no ridiculous systems. You just get some skill points that you put in different areas and you level them up to 100. That's the system, and then you have turn-based combat, but it's so much fun. Like, it's just a good game, and I think that's what I like handheld systems for the most, are remakes of really good games that you can take with you. Like, that's why I like Chrono Trigger on it for the DS that I played on it. Like, I don't have to sit in front of my TV. I can play Chrono Trigger anywhere I want. And that's, I think, what I like, is seeing those old games I never got to play or didn't play or want to play again in a new, better version that I can carry with me wherever I go. And that's really what Dragon Quest VIII was. I'm having a lot of fun with Earthbound. Like, Earthbound's weird, and I can't play it for very long at a time, but it's on the Virtual Console just for the new 3DS. But since I grabbed a new 3DS to play Xenoblade, I figured I might as well. And it's not quite as magical as it was when I was a teenager, but once I get further into it, I probably will. But it was just a little slower than I thought I remembered it being, but it's still just as weird and goofy, and the writing is just as funny as it ever was, and just this surreal thing. So if y'all have never played Earthbound on the 3DS, do it.
Cool. And, well, obviously, Bravely Default, I see on your list, because we've talked about that at length, and then a couple others that we'll get to in a second, because they're on my list too, I know. But so a couple that I want to call out, like, more in depth. Super Mario 3D Land is such a good 3D level-based Mario game. And I know you and I talked about this when Odyssey came out last year, where Odyssey is like kind of that exploration vein of Mario games, but there's a whole other one that's more level-based, and those are kind of the ones I always find myself going back to and like drawn to over time. I enjoy the exploration games when they're in front of me, but I never really want to revisit and like relive in that world. Whereas I'll go back and I'll beat a level-based Mario just randomly every once in a while. And I think that Super Mario 3D World is still my favorite Mario game out there.
Oh, wow.
More than Odyssey, easily, for me. And Super Mario 3D Land, the one on the 3DS, is the precursor to that game. You can see how they took this as a stepping stone on the way to that game on the Wii U. So this is probably my favorite Mario on a handheld device is Super Mario 3D Land. So I have to call it out because it's so good.
And I've never played either of those. That I've still not touched one of the 3D Mario World or Land. It's something that I want to do, and I have it sitting in the other room where I borrowed Super Mario 3D World, and I haven't played it. Like, if it's that good,
you should. It's my favorite Mario game at this point in the world.
Wow.
It's really, really good. So The Legend of Zelda: A Link Between Worlds is my favorite Zelda game, right beneath Breath of the Wild. So Breath of the Wild took the number one spot when that came out, but I really like this Zelda game, and it's a more traditional style Zelda game. You know, it's not open world in the same way Breath of the Wild is, that's kind of the new direction it feels like. They're taking Zelda in a new way, you know, but in the old style of Zelda games, the classic one that like everything else was made in, this is my favorite one, is on the 3DS. So A Link Between Worlds is just so good.
And it's the direct sequel to
A Link to the Past. Yep.
Or okay, I didn't remember. I was thinking it was direct sequel instead of just like spiritual successor. And I haven't played this one either. I need to play this one, and I haven't, mainly because of when I thought about it, I was just coming off of Breath of the Wild, and I figured that I would hate it coming off of it. So now enough time has passed that I can go back and play one of the old style Zeldas and be okay.
You should. It's a great game. And then, okay, so Shovel Knight. So I saved these because, like, a lot of these games I'm talking about right now are some of my favorite games of all time, like, at this point in my life, right? Shovel Knight. It came to the 3DS first. You can play Shovel Knight on, like, anything now because they keep releasing it other places. But 3DS was, I think, the first console it came to. If not, it was in the first wave of consoles that it was released on. And it's probably one of my favorite games of all time at this point. Oh, my God.
And
it's
I think
so
it
good.
is... Man, I think it is just mildly okay. I played it and I got a little while into it. And put it down. And like, I don't care to ever play a Shovel Knight game again. What's so good about it to you? Like, I don't think I get it.
It's the way that you remember, like the nostalgia in your mind for some of the older like action style games that are like action platformers basically. This nails them, but in a way that it actually matches to your nostalgia. Because if you go back and play ones from, you know, like NES and Super Nintendo system, they just don't hold up the way that you hope they would. Some of them do, some Super Nintendo games especially. But in general, if you're going back to really old games that you remember like vividly in your mind, they never measure up to what you're actually thinking of, like those, you know, rose-tinted glasses. And Shovel Knight plays like those are remembered. Does that make sense?
Yes, and because it does. You're absolutely 110% right, because I played it and I was like, oh yeah, this plays like Castlevania, or this plays like Mega Man, or whichever, like it plays like one of those. I'm like, I'm not in the mood to play a retro game right now. And like, it's fine, it's good, but you're right. I haven't gone back and played like old original Mega Man and old original Castlevania in a long time, so it matches those memories. So I'd never really thought about it in that perspective before. Like that's
I think it's one of my favorite games because of when I grew up and when I played the games that I played at the ages I played them. I don't expect it to be anybody else's, like one of their favorite games, but just because of where I landed with gaming at the time that I did, this one has floated to the top because it feels like those that have a special place in my heart, but I hate to go back to those games.
I totally see that. Now I understand that. I get that, and I can appreciate that, because if it was just that game on its own,
no,
I really don't understand.
Which I still think it's a good game on its own more than you do, but
it's fine.
That's not why I hold it up so high.
Okay, that totally understand it.
Yeah. So the last one that I want to dive more deep in is Fire Emblem Awakening and then Fire Emblem Fates, because Fire Emblem was a game that I always kind of wanted to get into and never could. I just couldn't get any purchase on it to really like dig in until Fire Emblem Awakening, and now it's probably one of my favorite Nintendo series out there. And I love Fire Emblem. I mean, that's probably come through on the podcast over the last couple of years, but Fire Emblem Awakening was my gateway to that, you know, and that was not long before we started the podcast. Like, I know one of the recent episodes, you're like, oh yeah, you were always a Fire Emblem fan, but I wasn't, you know, I never played any of the earlier games. I think Awakening came out in 2012 and I didn't play it right away. I played it like a year after, maybe a little bit more than that, maybe 2 years after. And then Fire Emblem Fates was the follow-up to that. So they improved on all the systems and they built out the story, and it's really like 3 games in one because there's 3 entire campaigns in it. So that was giving me more of what I loved and kind of reinforcing it and building on it. So both of those together are fantastic. Fire Emblem Fates has 2 base games you can buy. You can either buy Birthright or Conquest, and either one of them gives you the option to download the other one for a discounted price, basically.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah, and then you can also download the third campaign, which is, I'm not going to remember it off the top of my head, but it's like the middle path between the two, because it's like 2 warring houses, so those are the 2 main campaigns, and then there's kind of this like middle ground where you can bring everybody together and have characters from the 2 different campaigns interact, which is really, really cool.
I remember you playing that one and talking about it, basically where you play the 2, and it was basically this, I don't even know, it's like you said, it's the middle path, but it makes everything make sense. Like the things that you see from one perspective to the other, it's kind of like watching The Last Jedi, and you see all the different perspectives that Luke attacking Ben, doing that, like spoilers. But that's what I think of with that, where...
I mean, like, it's the reason why I'm so excited for the Fire Emblem game on Switch that's coming out, is because of those 2 games from the 3DS, which is not that long ago at all. So I have to call that out. It's just like, it's such a good game, and it got me into a new series, and it's a classic in my mind now.
I look forward to the next one. I haven't played any of the others, and it's not that I don't want to. They look really good. They look exactly like my kind of game. I just haven't done it, and I wasn't in the mood for strategy RPGs when I was going through my JRPG binge, but when I saw the video of the Switch version, I got really excited because it's different, but it looks like the kind of thing I want to play.
Broad strokes recommendations for the 3DS. It's just that like the whole 3DS 2DS family has so many great games from almost every genre on the market right now that there's something here for most people, is like the core thing, which is one of the reasons we want to do this one first, because it has such a wide appeal. And there are just so many games that I could have added to this list, but we didn't want this to turn into a 3-hour show, and I could do entire episodes on some of these games individually too, which I'm not ruling out in the future, but not for right now, not for the purposes of this episode. And I didn't even mention like all of the great remasters, re-releases, multi-platform games that are on the 3DS. So to go over those super quick, some of the top of mind ones like Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask, Donkey Kong Country Returns, Xenoblade Chronicles, which you mentioned, Mario and Luigi Dream Team, Dragon Quest VIII, which I know you mentioned, like Radiant Historia, Monster Hunter Generations, and that's just like a sampling, right? There are tons and tons of other multi-platform games that have come out on the 3DS.
Yeah, they do. Like I said, one of my favorite things are the remasters that they do and bring them back. It's great. And with Monster Hunter Generations, you can actually take your save game on it and import it into the Switch, they said. When the Generations Ultimate or whatever it's called comes out on the Switch, that you're going to be able to use your 3DS saves to do something with it at least.
Cool. No, I didn't know about that. That's pretty sweet.
Yeah, so I don't know if it has to be a complete file, because I know you never got all the way through it because you always bounced, but there's something that you can do with the Switch version when you try it. And I mean, I look like Donkey Kong Country Returns is great because it's the precursor to Tropical Freeze. It's just a good Donkey Kong Country game. And like Tales of the Abyss is another one that I really, really, really enjoyed on this, because when I discovered I loved that series again, a lot of people said that the one on the 3DS, Tales of the Abyss in the Tales of series, was the best one. And when I started playing it, the one thing that I've noticed about it, like, it is fantastic. It is so much fun to play. The story is pseudo sci-fi fantasy, just exactly like I like that kind of science fantasy, and the main character in it I despise. Like, you're supposed to. Like, he is horribly annoying and terrible, and the story is about him becoming a better person, and is about him realizing how utterly obnoxious he is. And it's really interesting because every time he speaks, you hate him. and then you keep playing because of all these other characters yelling at him for being terrible. And I thought it was really well done, and it's something I haven't seen in a game outside of that one in particular on the 3DS, and that's the only console it's on, and it's considered widely the best or one of the top 2 best in the series that spans like 30 years now, something like that, 20 years.
Well, yeah, and it's just a good JRPG system in general, too. Like, there's lots and lots of not only, like, A-tier JRPGs, but, like, a lot of B-tier games out there that you and I haven't mentioned. But if you want that, if you're open to just JRPGs in general, this might be, like, the best system for you, honestly, right now.
Yeah, I mean, you've got things like the 2DS, not the 3DS, but even 2DS, the Nintendo DS had Dragon Quest IX, which is one of the best job systems in any game, and it was just a DS game. That the Shin Megami Tensei has pretty much everything that they've done recently on the 3DS, that if you're a Persona fan and you've ever wanted to go back and try any of the actual Shin Megami Tenseis or the side games, the kind of offshoots like Devil's Summoner and Soul Hackers.
There's lots of spin-offs.
Bunches of those, and like they're on the 3DS. And I found out, like, I'm really intrigued because it's like called Persona Q, that was released on the 3DS, that takes characters from Persona 3 and Persona 4 and gives them a side story together on the 3DS, and it's done in chibi style. And it's the only Persona game that's on the 3DS that isn't, there's not any, all the rest of them are Shin Megami Tensei games, and the only Persona one is Persona Q, and it is a blend of 3 and 4 in the style of one of the spin-off games that in chibi style. It's weird, and I want to play it just to see. But they've said that if you like the characters,
there's just
that's
tons
great.
of those.
Yeah.
Tons and tons of like those type of JRPGs that are out there.
Kind of experimental JRPGs.
Yeah, in a lot of ways. And just like Atlas Games and like, I don't know, there's a bunch of publishers out there that like just crank out JRPGs. And if you're into that, you know who they are. And they've released so much for the 3DS over time. And the other thing, like putting the list together here, was just realizing that what we ran into here with like the DS backwards compatibility is something that as we go back and do other Nintendo handhelds, we're going to run into with almost every single one, because the DS had backwards compatibility with the Game Boy Advance, and the Game Boy Advance had backwards compatibility with all the Game Boys before it.
Yep.
And the Game Boy Color had backwards compatibility with the original one. It's like Nintendo just builds this into their systems, but it's something that can't be underemphasize the fact that not only do you have access to the entire 3DS library, you also get access to the whole DS library.
Yep. And I'm looking over at my shelf right now, and I have to correct myself. I was wrong. Scribblenauts and Super Scribblenauts were original DS games. You were right.
Okay. Well, that's fine. So I think like that's basically what we wanted to talk about for the 3DS. But, if you're not going after those current gen systems, I would probably recommend the 3DS before I would recommend any other console at this point.
Yeah, really, I would. I mean, as much as we talk about the Vita being fantastic and have talked about it in the past on the show being just great, and it is, the 3DS, I have both of them, and even though the Vita has all sorts of JRPG stuff on it, and that's really what that console is great for, I've ended up playing the 3DS. I bought this one and don't regret it at all, spending the money and splurging on it. That if you're going to be spending a lot of time gaming, you can get a lot of gaming in for a really, really good value with a 3DS these days. You can get games cheap.
Yeah, sweet. There you go. There's our recommendation, Rob. Go get a 3DS. But we're going to come back to this topic with other systems, other consoles over time. We'll be back to it because we both really like this idea, and I can just tell it'll come up again. I'm not sure what the next system will be, but you'll find out when we find out, basically.
Yeah.
With that, it's probably time for Geeky Offer of the Week.
So we've got a Patreon, you guys. We have talked about it in the past a couple of weeks ago, but we have a couple of rewards I think you guys would like. If you donate, if you become a patron, we have a special role that you become a patron saint of Geekery on our Discord server, and you can upload your own emoji, so you know that that's fun, and you get a purple name, which is all fancy. And we have the Patreon lens, where you get to see me trying to experiment with kind of a Snapchatty type story thing, and it's all weird, and I'm probably making a fool out of myself, so you know that you want to support us in doing that, and you want to support me making a fool out of myself. So you can go to Patreon patreon.com/geek2geekcast and look at all of it and see what all we've got going on and support the podcast. It would be fantastic if you would. And because we also have some people who have taken us up on this offer, I have some real nice thank yous that I have to give out this week. So Joseph and Chocobo Chica, thank you. It's real nice of you to support us like this. I really appreciate it. It's real nice of you.
You get extremely Southern when you do thank yous. It's very interesting.
Well, I do it on purpose. I mean, that is my exaggerated, ridiculous Southern accent. That's my real nice thank you.
A Southern thank you. You have that waiting for you if you join their Patreon.
You do.
Not to mention the other stuff on the network. So this week on Geekitude with Joe and Ray, they talked about Comic-Con, which was really interesting to hear because Joe and Ray have both gone to Comic-Con many times over the years. Ray as like an artist and for work more, and Joe as a fan for like a long time. So hearing their perspective is always fantastic. And then Tea Time with Katie and Chelsea, they did one of their like not quite book club, but they like talk about a book that's going to be made into a motion picture called, what was it this week? Crazy Rich Asians. Yeah. So that was interesting to listen to. It's always cool when they dive into a book. Like I always appreciate when anybody does that. And then Blogist, of course, we talked about it a few times. It's still going on. It's not too late to join, but you can go to agronaut.com if you want to start a blog or a stream or anything, any kind of content creation that you just want to get into and you want a supportive community. That's the whole idea with Blogist, is to like kind of rebuild this community that we used to have with blogging that we've lost along the way. So again, agronaut.com is a great place to go, or you can reach out to one of us to get the links to. Yep. With that, probably time for Weekly Geekery. What do you have this week?
So I'm playing a lot of World of Warcraft. I
noticed. I shake my head, but I'm also happy for you. It's a really weird mix of emotions.
It is. It always is. Like WoW is a really weird mix of emotions for me on at any given time. I told my wife that I was playing again, that I'd re-upped my subscription, and her response was, "But you hate WoW." And I laughed and I was like, "I only sometimes hate WoW." And it's really strange because she said, if you get into a bad mood, then you're not playing anymore. And she says that in the most loving way possible, because sometimes when I'm playing World of Warcraft, it puts me in a really, really terrible mood. Like when I'm progression rating or whenever I'm really grinding something out that's just not fun and I feel like I have to do it, that's when I stop enjoying it. And right now, there's so much stuff that I'm actually just enjoying. And because I was in the huge depression because of my mom for like the last few months, it's great to come out of that kind of cave of my JRPGs and really be social. Like talking with people on the communities that we have in game and talking to our listeners like that, and my friends here, they're all my friends now. We're talking and playing WoW together and getting on the Discord and having tons of discussion on our Discord server about World of Warcraft and just tons of other things. But like we're having great discussions on WoW, and like one of our listeners, Damai, went out and invited me to one of his guild's friends and family runs of getting the new mount that's going away next Tuesday, the Violet Spellwing. Like he just DM'd me on Patreon one night and said, "Hey, are you going to be around?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I just got home," and got me this special Violet Spellwing mount, which I'm not going to be able to get after next week, that I have no way of getting outside of that. So like super thank you for that. And but WoW and our Discord community is great. Like it's growing, and like we're all playing WoW together. So you should play WoW with us, Void.
No, I'm not.
It's not going to happen. No, I know it's not. No. We started The Good Place again. Season 3 of it is coming up, and we've been watching some like developer interviews, which is what it feels like. The Comic-Con panel that came out this year that they just got finished with from The Good Place is put up in its entirety on YouTube, and they've done a Good Place podcast, which I'm going to listen to soon. But the main thing was this SDCC panel with everybody, like listening to the creators on why he created this show makes it like it is one of the smartest shows on TV, and it really was a way for him to just kind of do this really smart show about ethics and this thought experiment. And do something really funny with it, because if you take it too seriously, it's terrible. But if you put it in a really surreal atmosphere, like, people can learn things. And it was just really interesting on how he did it. And Mike Schur did it, who is like The Office and Parks and Rec. This is his new one, and it's fantastic. So we started rewatching it to go into season 3 so that we can catch everything that's going on. So we're super excited about it, because it may be the best show on TV right now. So I also watched Power Rangers the movie. Finally got around to it, and it's awesome that it is so good. Like, it was so much better than I expected, and I kind of expected what you did out of like the new Independence Day movie or this last Jurassic World, kind of going in. It's a silly action movie. They play, Power Rangers theme, and they do their thing, but they actually had character development in this one, and it surprised me that they didn't fall back on just stereotypes and just archetypes, that they gave these characters enough depth to be people. Like, it's not what I expected out of a Power Rangers movie, like with Zach having a sick mom at home, and then it's showing him spending quality time with her, and that being a major part of his character. Watching that also made me realize that the guy who plays Jason, that first, the Red Ranger, is also, and I can't remember his name, the new guy who came in season 2 as the foil for Steve in Stranger Things. The guy with the mullet and the hot rod car. I just don't remember his name, but I love him as Jason. Like, it was great, and I hated even looking at him in Stranger Things. So it's really funny that he's such a good actor that I could buy him in both roles. That I really truly loved it, and I cannot wait for a sequel on it. Like, I really loved it.
I liked it. I thought it was a good movie. I don't think I liked it as much as you did, but I would definitely watch a sequel if it came out.
And I know that Chris, one of our listeners, was talking to us about it, and he's a huge Super Sentai fan. And so every time I see anything about that, I think of him. And him talking about that has made me go read up on a lot of Super Sentai stuff. And it's just really interesting because I know how much he loves it. And every time I mention it on Twitter, he chimes in. And so I can have some great discussions with him and other people about the Power Rangers that I've never had before. So it makes me really happy. So it's really cool. I hope they make a sequel to it. And then I also ended up moving all of my blogs back to Geek Fitness. I decided to keep going with the Geek Fitness thing, that even though I was going to do the Professor Beej is awesome thing, there was something that was brought up to me over the week by Blizzard that made me rethink that and just finally move back to where I've been for the last few years. Turns out when you try to change your battle tag to Beej, that it considers it profane.
Yeah, I saw that. That you mentioned that. So I'm glad that like you're going back to Geek Fitness. I think it's like all encompassing enough for you that you can write anything on it, which like if you are thinking about doing Blogist, or even if you don't, but you want to do a blog in the future or some kind of content creation in the future, unless you have a really like solid core idea that you can stick with forever, I always recommend doing something that not generic, but generic enough that you can do anything under that like property, basically.
Right.
Which is why my blog is A Green Mushroom. Like, I can write whatever on there. It's mostly video game stuff, but it's not always. No. And at this point, it's mostly just me putting like the podcast on there every week because that's where my creative energy goes. But I think Geek Fitness is enough you, but also enough like geek stuff that you can just do whatever you want on there, and that can kind of be the home for everything.
Right. And that's kind of what I'm thinking. It's kind of what I wanted to do initially and really never did. Like, I never really felt comfortable with doing really geeky stuff. And just this week, I've decided, like, I've posted this week about lessons I've learned from blogging because of Blogist, and redoing a post I'd done years ago, and then writing about World of Warcraft today. And like now I'm going to have tomorrow, I actually relaunched completely the Geek Fitness podcast. That's all I'm calling it, is just the Geek Fitness podcast. I decided to use anchor.fm for that because it's a completely free podcast host, and I'm really excited. There's something coming up, and I can't say anything, but it's officially going to launch. Like, I'm getting episodes up this week, so by the time you guys are listening to this, I will officially launch it on Thursday, like with stuff with Anchor. And
I'm excited for it. I know that like you're bringing it back. I'm excited to see what form it takes. You'll have to just like regroup after it's launched and you can talk about it more.
Yeah, I'm very excited. And I do like that platform. You know, you and I talked about it before, and some of us on Slack had discussed it. But using it, it's actually good for someone who is going in like casually like this, where I'm doing it, and it's perfectly fine for people who aren't casual. But there are a lot of resources on there that I've taken advantage of just putting this up like it is, and I really like the app so far. Like I've listened to podcasts through that app just over the last few days, and I like it too.
Cool. Yeah,
So, yeah.
I've had a couple weeks since I was out last week. I guess probably the main thing that I did was work. I'm not going to talk about that in my geekery, but because of that, like I don't have as many in-depth things as I normally do. The main thing that I did do like more of was ESO. So I kind of beat Elder Scrolls Online. I didn't really, but like in my mind, I always like draw a line in the sand at some point with an MMO and say, okay, I beat it. I can move on to the next thing because I like to finish things. Like I'm an explorer in games, but I'm also very much an achiever. And if I don't have that end point, I will just sour on a game to the point where I don't like it anymore. So for ESO, it was, you know, I beat Somerset content and then I tried the main quest for a while. I got into the Thieves Guild until it turned into grindy, like until the MMO part reared its head.
Right.
And I know I talked about that, but then the Dark Brotherhood, the same thing happened. I got into it. I was enjoying the story. It got to the point where it was grindy and I was like, okay, I'm done with that. So really I was close enough to hitting the level cap that was kind of the mental line that I drew for myself as finishing was hitting the level cap. So I hit level 50. I started getting the alternate advancement points that in this game are called like champion levels or champion points. CP, I think is what it is. So really, I got a solid month out of Elder Scrolls Online, and I liked it, and I liked it a lot. But I could tell if I kept going at the rate I was going, I would probably start to turn on the game, and I didn't want to do that. So I canceled my subscription. I got like almost exactly 30 days of play out of it. And the thing is, I can easily see myself returning to this in the same way that I returned to Final Fantasy XIV when a new expansion comes out, you know? So there's going to be some point in the future, whether it's a year or a couple years out or the next expansion that comes out for ESO, where I will return to this world, whether with the same character or whether I start a new one. I don't know. We'll see what happens at the time. But I know that if I stopped where I stopped, that I will be interested enough to come back at some point, which was kind of my goal.
And when you did that, you played a warden, right? That's what you started and played with?
No, I played I'm so bad at remembering the classes in this game. I think it's like a Nightblade or something. It's basically the rogue analog.
Actually, and I didn't like it. I started that one. I did not like playing it, and I actually went back and played a warden because I had it unlocked somehow on my PS4 version. And you and I had talked about it kind of being the newbie friendly one that you could do roughly anything and just kind of move into the content with it. And it's a lot of fun to play. That you were absolutely right. So whoever told you about that, I want to thank, because it was super fun getting it, because it comes with the PS4 version, because I think it has Morrowind built in.
Yeah, probably somebody on the AgroChat podcast told me about it.
Yeah.
I know they're not on the network, but hey, go listen to them because I love the AgroChat podcast and I talk to those guys all the time. Yeah, Warden is really good. So that was like the most in-depth thing I did. I did a bunch of other stuff. Like I don't usually watch TV. The only time I'll do it is like if I really want to watch something, or if I'm completely wiped out from work that like I don't have enough brain power to engage with stuff. So I did a little bit of that in the last week or two. I rewatched Looper because it's a Rian Johnson movie, and I wanted to see it after I had seen The Last Jedi a few times, and I liked it a lot more this time than I did the first time, and I liked it the first time anyway. So Looper is still a really good movie if you like time travel movies, or if you're interested in seeing more of Rian Johnson's work.
Yeah, I really love Looper. It was actually the first movie I ever bought digitally because it wasn't available for rent yet on Amazon, and I had missed it in theater because like everything had gone wrong every time I tried to go to the theater, and I wanted to see it so badly. And when I saw it on Amazon for sale, I immediately bought it and stayed up late that night to watch it, and I loved it. And I was so glad that I bought it. And so I'll go back every now and then whenever I'm just kind of browsing through Amazon. I'm like, oh, I own that, and I watch it, and it never is not good except for one scene. There's one scene that I wish wasn't in it, and it's the Bruce Willis action scene, and it feels completely out of place in the movie. That just they give Bruce Willis a machine gun for just a little while. It's almost like he has it written into his contract. Give me a machine gun and a room to shoot at it. And that's the only part of the movie that I don't like. It just feels so out of place.
That's fine. I thought that one was totally fine, that scene. But anyway, I like the movie, and I like time travel movies. And it's
fantastic.
It's a good time travel movie, too, which doesn't always... Sometimes I like time travel movies, but they're not good, but I still like them. This one I think is good, and I like it. So that was nice to see that it held up on a rewatch. I also rewatched Infinity War, which it was... I enjoyed it less the second time. I still think it's half a story, so I don't want to talk about it or think about it too much more until the second half comes out, and then I can actually have complete thoughts. I watched a little bit of Planet Earth 2, which was really good, cool. Documentary about nature. My daughter and I watched that together, which was cool. And then I watched a Netflix original, it's almost a reality TV show, but it's also kind of a history show. It's called Churchill's Secret Agents. And it's about the SOE in World War II, which were dropped behind enemy lines, and they built up resistance cells, or they were spies, or all of that kind of secret agents behind enemy lines. And the reality show part comes in where they bring in 15 people and they put them through the same training and the same qualifications, and they start weeding them out until they get down to a core group that would have actually qualified for the SOE in World War II. So as they're talking about the training and the history, they're putting these people through the training and the history. And then at the very end, they give them, it's called the final scheme, which is basically a test mission before they would be allowed to go out into the field. So they actually do that.
Wow. That sounds really cool.
It was really cool, and it's Netflix original, so it doesn't overstay its welcome. It's 6 episodes, maybe 7. It's not a 22 episode series that they drag out because they need drama and they need to fill time on American TV. It's just to the point, and then they're done and they move on. So Churchill's Secret Agents was good. I also came to the realization that I need to stop looking for new music, because you and I talked about music a while ago, and the fact that I just don't listen to music much. I know it came up in an episode, and ever since we talked about that, I've been thinking about it, because it's not that I dislike music, but I hate the process of finding and trying new music. So in the last couple weeks here, I have needed music as a tool to get my work done, because I need to be in the zone. I'm not straight up coding, but I'm definitely doing development and logic work where I need to stay zoned in and you know what I mean,
yes,
right? You've
I
done
absolutely
that before.
do.
Okay. So I was just listening to Fall Out Boy on repeat. The entire, is it still called a discography? Whatever, all the albums digitally. And I would just listen to it all the way through and then start it again and listen to it all the way through. And Fall Out Boy is my favorite band.
They're so good. I love them. I get made fun of a lot for loving Fall Out Boy like I do, but they are great. One of my favorite songs is Immortals, that just the one from Big Hero 6. I just love that song. I was listening to it this afternoon.
So I have come in the last couple weeks here to embrace the fact that I'm going to stop looking for new music, because that way lies frustration for me. I'm going to embrace the fact that I'm just going to live in the music from my teens and early 20s forever. And if other stuff crosses my path, which it will, I'll just add it. But that's what I was doing before anyway. So that mental shift has actually been really big for me, because I can kind of enjoy music again without feeling like I'm missing out, because I just don't care. I think that was the realization I came to. I don't care that other people listen to new stuff. Whatever.
Yep.
And
that I did the same thing a while back, and that is the point at which I officially became an old man. I don't care about these kids and their newfangled music. I just want the stuff I grew up with.
Well, the thing is, I never did. And I just realized it now in my 30s. I never cared about finding new music, but I felt like I needed to care when I was with other people that did. And I just don't anymore. I don't know. Something clicked in my brain after we talked about it, and it was just nagging me for weeks. But I finally figured out that I don't care about new music, and I should probably stop pretending like I need to. And that's been great. The other thing that I found in the last few weeks was a new podcast called Business Wars, which is really, really interesting, because my mind has been in business mode a lot lately. It takes 2 competitors in a space, and it gives kind of the history and the background and what happened with them over time. So there was Nike and Adidas, and every one of these, they usually have 4 to 7 episodes about it, and it really covers the history of it. So there's Nike versus Adidas, there's Hertz versus Pulitzer, there's there's just a ton of them out there, and they were really, really interesting. So I've been listening to those, and they're good. But the thing that I've been doing more than anything else has been playing an idle game, because I have no brain power at the end of the week, at the end of the day, the end of the week. So I've been playing this game called Idle Apocalypse on my phone, and it's not good, but for an idle game, it's pretty good. With like that qualification in mind, I don't know why I keep playing it. I've been playing it for weeks on end. I think after I finally like get done with this, it's not quite a sprint for work, but there's a lot more work than normal for another couple weeks here.
Yeah.
I'll probably delete it from my phone and never think about it again. But at the moment, Idle Apocalypse is just like the perfect game for me, which is sad to say, but that's the state that I'm in right now.
Like, what is it?
It's an idle game. I mean,
like, I don't...
numbers go up, and then you improve things and the numbers go up more, and then if you want to, you get to the point where you like reset the whole world, but you carry some stuff with you, so the next time through it you're even better. It's not it's an idle game. It's like you can click, you can tap on stuff, but you don't need to. You just automate it, and then you check in all the time.
Okay.
And yeah, I don't think I'd recommend it, but if you are also in need of an idle game, check that out. And the other thing that I found that's a really good work tool, again, after you and I talked about like my use of tabs versus using bookmarks, which I don't get people who use bookmarks. I found this thing called the Great Suspender. Have you ever heard of it?
No.
It is for people like me, where I have probably 50 tabs up at any given time. That's the way I operate across like 2 different screens and like 3 different windows worth of tabs. The Great Suspender, you can do all sorts of settings about when it will suspend tabs that you haven't clicked on in a while or you haven't interacted with. And you can whitelist tabs so that they never go to sleep. And you can make all sorts of rules around it. And that has improved the battery life of my laptop so much in meetings throughout the day. And that's why I finally like went and tried it out, was because there are days where I've been nothing but meetings for like 8 or 9 hours.
Okay.
And like this makes it so my laptop can actually make it through those instead of me having to like put it to sleep or like really conserve my battery. So if you're interested in that, if you're a tab addict like me and you have 50 to 100 tabs open across multiple windows in Chrome all the time, go look at the Great Suspender add-on for Chrome, because it's really, really good.
I should probably do that, because while I do use bookmarks like constantly for stuff I want to keep in mind, I have not actually. While I do use bookmarks for a lot of stuff, I still keep a lot of tabs open, and it runs my computer hot. That it slows down, and like so much of my memory is because I have so many tabs open that's something that I really, really need to do.
Cool. That's all I got. I don't have anything like super exciting or super in-depth outside of ESO, just because my mind has been in work. Give it a couple more weeks, and then we're also going to get to the fall, and I'm going to be playing Spider-Man and all sorts of other stuff. So we'll get there. But for the moment, that's kind of where I've been at.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm playing WoW. It's
working. The end of the summer. This kind of happens, like this is a good time for me to be too busy at work, because there's not that much that I wish I could be playing. I don't feel like I'm missing out on the newest releases or movies or shows or anything that it's like it came out and I'm like, oh, I don't have time because I've been working so much that I can't see it. I really don't feel like that at all, because we're in August and it was just July and like nothing comes out this time of year.
Yeah, and this is just one of those things, like my last few months have been kind of a blur, so it's kind of nice not to really have anything that I feel compelled to do. That I'm excited about the new expansion that comes out next week, but it's not something that I'm just waiting on with bated breath. That I'm just like, yeah, stuff is happening. It's like I'm just chilling. Like that is perfectly great for me.
Yeah. Cool. Well, it was fun to talk tonight. I'm glad we got to do 3DS. We'll come up with more systems here in the future. That's probably about it for tonight. You can write to us with comments, suggestions, or feedback. Our email address, as always, is geek2geekcast@gmail.com, or reach us on Twitter @geek2geekcast. We also have the longer discussion threads on our subreddit at reddit.com/r/geek2geekcast.
And we also have great discussions on Slack and Discord. So if you have an account for either of those or want one, go to slack.geek2geekcast.com or discord.geek2geekcast.com and get an invite. And while you're at geek2geekcast.com, check out the rest of our podcast network. They're awesome.
For sure. I blog at agreenmushroom.com, and you can find me at grnmushroom. That's green mushroom without the E's on Twitter.
And I'm on Twitter as @ProfessorBeej. That's Beej with 2 E's. And I am once again blogging and podcasting at geekfitness.net.
Yay, return to it. That's awesome. We've been Boyd and Beej with your Geek to Geek podcast. That'll do it for this week. See you next week, geeks.
Bye. Bye. Bye.
Hi everyone, I'm Katie.
And I'm Chelsea, and we are the hosts of Tea Time with Katie and Chelsea. We are two best friends who love pop culture and talking about pretty much whatever we want. Katie!
Yes?
Stop thinking about Zac Efron and tell our future listeners what some of our latest episodes have been about.
Well, we've talked about Zac Efron.
No, get it together, Katie.
Fine. We've talked about fan fiction, classical literature adaptations, favorite TV couples, and so much more. So grab your cup of tea or whatever your drink of choice is and download our podcast today.
Hi, my name is Joe Hogan, and I'm a geek. And if you're currently listening to this, there's a good chance you're a geek too. So check out my podcast, Geektitude. Each week, I talk with somebody about their geek aptitude. Sometimes I talk to people in a geeky profession. Sometimes it's someone doing something really cool with their geekiness. Often it's another geeky podcaster. But it's always someone who wants to share their inner geek. So join me each week as we come together to geek out about all the geeky stuff we love. And remember, this week, keep it geek.